Donald Trump admits it, what it's all about. They want to steal their oil.
How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door.
So that's why they put economic sanctions on Venezuela. That's why they want to get rid of Maduro. It's because they want to steal their natural resources. Come see me on tour in Appleton, Wisconsin, Rosemont, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Louisville, Fort Wayne, Hermosa Beach, Sacramento, San Francisco, Irvine. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. So here's Trump is going after Venezuela. As soon as you find out that Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia, you know why Donald Trump tried to overthrow Venezuela in his first term, why the United States government has been trying to overthrow them for 30 years, and why he's trying to do it again. And he's doing it under the guise of fighting drugs. Here's what he said.
When you come out and when you leave the room, you'll see that we just, over the last few minutes, literally shot out a boat, a drug-carrying boat, a lot of drugs in that boat. And you'll be seeing that and you'll be reading about that. It just happened moments ago. And our great general, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's been so incredible, including what took place in Iran, knocking out potential nuclear power for a long time to come. I think within a month they would have had it if we didn't do what we did. But he gave us a little bit of a briefing, and you'll see. And there's more where that came from. We have a lot of drugs pouring into our country, coming in for a long time. And we just, these came out of Venezuela and coming out very heavily from Venezuela. A lot of things are coming out of Venezuela. So
yeah, oil.
We took it out, and you'll get to see that after this meeting is over.
So I'm going to show you why that's a lie, what he's saying about the drugs coming out of Venezuela. But first, I'm going to show you the real reason that Donald Trump and every president has been trying to overthrow Venezuela. And here he is going to admit it. Donald Trump admits it, what it's all about. They want to steal their oil.
How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door.
So that's why they put economic sanctions on Venezuela. That's why they want to get rid of Maduro. It's because they want to steal their natural resources. The same reason we overthrew Iran. The same reason we did Iraq. The same reason we did Libya. It's always the same goddamn reason. Donald Trump left troops in Syria. Why? For the oil. And how do I know that? He said so. And here's why what he said about the drugs coming out of Venezuela isn't true. For reference, this is a picture showing actual data about drug routes from the U.S. government themselves. Note how Venezuela is indeed the place where drugs do not flow to the USA. Once again, this is according to the U.S. own official data. Let me put it. It's not coming. Here's Venezuela. Drugs are not coming from Venezuela to the United States, ladies and gentlemen. Latin America narcotics connection, maritime trafficking. This is Venezuela. This is where the drugs are coming from. That's August 31st, 2025. This is their own data. This is Venezuela. This is where the drugs are coming from. So the drug cartel state is actually Ecuador, but it's a U.S. vassal, so who cares? Huh. Declassified video showing the U.S. committed a war crime when it fired on a civilian vessel near Venezuela. Being suspected of carrying drugs does not carry a death sentence, and certainly not one without due process. So there's this boat that they say was carrying... Look at this boat. This is the boat they said that they blew up because it was carrying drugs. You see how tiny that boat? I thought it was going to be like a giant ship. It's a literal little boat. The difference between a boat and a ship. That's a boat. And they say, oh, it was full of drugs. So, and by the way, they say that anyway, Justin Amash, he says Congress has not authorized military hostilities against Venezuela. There's no exception permitting unilateral action because it's drugs or terrorism or a designated organization. The peace president strikes again. Here it is from the AP. Trump says U.S. strike on vessel in Caribbean targeted Venezuela's Tren de Aragua gang and killed 11 people. Well, guess what? Former Philippine President Duterte is in custody in The Hague right now. Why? Because he's being charged by the International Criminal Court for ordering the summary execution of alleged drug traffickers. Trump just ordered the summary execution of 11 alleged drug traffickers. President Donald Trump said Tuesday the U.S. has carried out a strike in the Southern Caribbean against a drug-carrying vessel that departed from Venezuela and was operated by the Tren de Aragua gang. No proof provided of any of that. The president said in a social media post that 11 people were killed in a rare U.S. military operation in the Americas, a dramatic escalation in the Republican administration's effort to stem the flow of narcotics from Latin America. That's not what he's doing. That's not what this is about. Trump also posted a short video clip of a small vessel appearing to explode in flames. The strike occurred while the terrorists were at sea in international waters transporting illegal narcotics headed to the United States, Trump said. No U.S. forces were harmed in the strike. Please let this serve as a notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States. I'll show you again that map. This is not where the drugs are coming from. This is where the oil is. The video appears to show a long multi-engine speedboat traveling at sea when a big bright flash of light bursts over the craft. The boat is then briefly seen covered in flames. The video, which is largely in black and white, is not clear enough to see if the craft is carrying as many as 11 people. The video also did not show any large or clear stashes of drugs inside the boat. And that's why they're saying it's AI. They're saying this is AI. So there's the boat. There's the boat. Do you see 11 people in there? Do you see large caches of drugs? So they're saying this was AI. So there's the boat. This is what your military is doing, ladies and gentlemen, to try to intimidate a country so we could steal their oil. Try to destabilize a country so we could go in there and steal their oil. There it is. So that's the big flash of light. And they say that's AI. They're saying that's not even real. Tren de Aragua originated more than a decade ago at an infamously lawless prison with hardened criminals in Venezuela's central state of Aragua. The gang has expanded in recent years as more than 7.7 million Venezuelans fled economic turmoil and migrated to the other Latin American countries or the U.S. Why do you think those 7.7 million Venezuelans fled Venezuela? Because the United States put sanctions on that country to make life miserable for people so they would overthrow their government so then we could come in and install a puppet and steal their oil. Well, that didn't happen. 7.7 million people left. And where'd they go? They came to the United States. Trump and administrative officials have repeatedly blamed the gang for being at the root of the violence and illicit drug dealing that plagued some cities. And the president on Tuesday repeated his claim, contradicted by a declassified U.S. intelligence assessment that Tren de Aragua is operating under Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's control. So even their own U.S. intelligence doesn't say this. Trump is just making this up. Just like he made up that Epstein is a left-wing hoax. He just makes stuff up. He's making this up. The White House did not immediately explain how the military determined that those on board the vessel were Tren de Aragua. How do you even know? The size of the gang is unclear, as it is the extent to which its actions are coordinated across state lines and national borders. Maduro did not address the strike directly, but charged that the U.S. is coming for Venezuela's riches. Of course they are. The South American country has the world's largest oil reserves. From the neighborhoods of Caracas, I tell you, there will be peace in Venezuela with sovereignty. Communications Minister Freddy Núñez questioned the veracity of that video. Based on the video provided, it's very likely that it was created using artificial intelligence. He couldn't say what tools would have been used to create that video, but said it showed an almost cartoonish animation rather than a realistic depiction of an explosion. Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio first announced the strike earlier Tuesday, shortly before Rubio left on a trip to Mexico and Ecuador for talks on drug cartels, security, tariffs, and more. In a brief exchange with reporters before departing Miami for Mexico City, Rubio deferred questions about the specifics of the strike to the Pentagon. He said the drugs on that vessel were likely headed to Trinidad or elsewhere in the Caribbean. So now we're patrolling Trinidad. We're doing international policing on behest of Trinidad. Here he is saying it. Here he is.
The president is going to be on offense against drug cartels and drug trafficking in the United States. It destabilizes not just the country, but the entire Caribbean basin. These particular drugs were probably headed to Trinidad or some other country in the Caribbean, at which point they just contribute to the instability.
So that's it. We're all too aware of the notorious and ongoing instability caused by drugs flooding into the nation of Trinidad. For years, Marco Rubio has spoken out against Maduro and other Latin American leftist governments and supported opposition leaders. Why? Because Marco Rubio is bought and paid for by the fossil fuel industry and the military-industrial complex. That's why. In 2018, no matter who you vote for, you get John McCain. In 2018, during Trump's first term, Rubio told Univision that there was a strong argument to be made for the use of U.S. military in Venezuela. So they're just shifting the reasons why now. They're not just making up a whole new reason. Before it was Maduro was a dictator. Herman is like, we have to go protect the people of Venezuela. We got to bring their people some democracy and steal their oil. He's also accused Venezuelan officials of aiding drug traffickers. Asked if Trump would carry out operations on Venezuelan soil, Rubio was opaque. We're going to take on drug cartels wherever they are and wherever they're operating against the interests of the United States. I bet they're operating right around the oil fields in Venezuela. Maduro has insisted that the U.S. is building a false drug trafficking narrative to try to force him out of office, which is exactly what's happening. So there's your peace president, Donald Trump, starting wars all over the place. Iran, bombing Yemen, funding a genocide, sanctioning, continuing to send arms to Ukraine, putting sanctions on India for buying oil from Russia, putting sanctions on Russia, and now doing this. He and other government officials have repeatedly cited a United Nations report that shows traffickers attempted to move only 5% of the cocaine produced in Colombia through Venezuela. Landlocked Bolivia and Colombia, the access to the Pacific and Caribbean, are the world's top cocaine producers. So it's Colombia and Bolivia. It's not Venezuela. The latest UN World Drug Report shows that various countries in South America, including Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, reported larger cocaine seizures in 2022 than in 2021. But it does not assign Venezuela the outsized role that the White House has in recent months. The impact of increased cocaine trafficking has been felt in Ecuador in particular, which has seen a wave of lethal violence in recent years linked to both local and transnational crime groups, most notably from Mexico and the Balkan countries. Maduro on Monday told reporters that he would constitutionally declare a republic in arms if his country were attacked by the United States forces deployed in the Caribbean. So, a strike carried out by the U.S. forces on a boat in the Caribbean, blah, blah, blah. The U.S. is not a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, but the U.S.'s military's legal advisors have previously said that the U.S. should, quote, act in a manner consistent with its provisions. What provisions? The provisions of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. And what does it say? Under the convention, countries agree not to interfere with vessels operating in international waters. There are limited exceptions to this which allow a state to seize a ship, such as in hot pursuit, where a vessel is chased from a country's waters into high seas. Force can be used to stop a boat, but generally this should be non-lethal measures. But he added that the use of aggressive tactics must be reasonable and necessary in self-defense, where there is immediate threat of serious injury or loss of life to enforcement officials, noting that the United States the moves they just did, were likely unlawful under the Law of the Sea. So under Article 2.4 of the UN Charter, countries can resort to force when under attack and deploying their military in self-defense. Trump has previously accused the Tren de Aragua cartel of conducting irregular warfare against the United States, and the State Department has designated the group as a foreign terrorist organization. But professional Michael Becker of the Trinity College Dublin told BBC that the U.S. action stretches the meaning of the term beyond its breaking point. The fact that U.S. officials describe the individuals killed by the U.S. strike as narco-terrorists does not transform them into lawful military targets. The U.S. is not engaged in an armed conflict with Venezuela or Tren de Aragua criminal organization. Not only does the strike appear to have violated the prohibition on the use of force, it also runs afoul of the right to life under international human rights laws. So this is Donald Trump bringing an era of peace, and there he is breaking every international law to kill people and try to start wars for oil. Professor Moffat said that the use of force in this case could amount to an extrajudicial arbitrary killing and a fundamental violation of human rights. Labeling everyone a terrorist does not make them a lawful target and enables states to sidestep international law. But the U.S. officials have been quick to defend the strike. Lindsey Graham wrote on X that the strike was ultimate and most welcome sign that we have a new sheriff in town. His fellow Republican Senator Bernie Moreno from Ohio wrote, "Sinking this boat saved American lives." To the narco traffickers. And so this is, again, they're all just tools. Questions have also been raised as to whether the White House compiled the U.S. law in authorizing the strike, complied with the U.S. law in authorizing the strike. The U.S. Constitution says that only Congress has the power to declare war. However, Article 2, which lays out the president's power, says that the president shall be commander-in-chief of the army, and some constitutional experts have suggested that this grants the president the power to authorize strikes against military targets. Trump's administration sources have previously cited this provision when defending U.S. strikes on Iran. Hegseth says boat strike is a start of a campaign against Venezuelan cartels. The defense secretary says President Trump said a small boat was carrying drugs but offered little evidence and few details. So there's your next war. It's in Venezuela. Congratulations. This is not what anybody voted for. Nobody. Congratulations. So there's only one bright spot in Trump's administration. The rest are dark spots. Very dark. Why are elite athletes, business moguls, and high performers using Armra colostrum? Armra colostrum is nature's first whole food with over 400 bioactive nutrients working at the cellular level to build lean muscle, accelerate recovery, and fuel performance, all without artificial stimulants or synthetic junk. Whether you're running a business, training hard, or just want an edge, Armra optimizes your body for peak output. We've worked out a special offer for my audience. You receive 30% off your first subscription order. Go to armra.com/Jimmy or enter Jimmy to get 30% off your first subscription order. That's armra.com/Jimmy. Come see me on tour in Appleton, Wisconsin, Rosemont, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, Louisville, Fort Wayne, Hermosa Beach, Sacramento, San Francisco, Irvine. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.